I'm Marvin, and Thanksgiving 2 years ago broke something in me. We were at my in-laws' house in Ohio, the dining room packed with family, the air heavy with turkey and tension. My wife, Clara, sat beside me, her hand gripping mine under the table. Her father, Harold, loomed at the head, his voice cutting through the chatter. I'd known for years he saw me as less a mechanic with rough hands, not the polished professional he wanted for Clara. But that night, he went too far. It started with a jab about my job, still fixing cars, Marvin. Must be nice, no real ambition. I swallowed the sting, but then, over pie, he said it, Clara could have done better than worthless trash like you. The room froze. My brother-in-law, Greg, coughed. Clara's mom, Diane, stared at her plate. My heart pounded, shame and rage mixing like oil and fire. I mumbled an excuse and stepped onto the porch, the November cold biting my skin. Worthless trash. The words echoed, each one a blade. Clara followed, her eyes wet, whispering, "He's drunk, Marv. He doesn't mean it." But I knew he did. Harold had always looked at me like I was nothing. Standing there, staring at the stars, I decided I couldn't let it slide. Not this time. I wasn't sure how, but I'd make him feel the weight of his words. The next morning, I woke early, my mind racing. Clara was still asleep, her face soft, unaware of the storm in me. In the garage, surrounded by tools, I plotted. Not violence, that's not me. But something sharp, something to cut through his arrogance. I decided on 3 messages, truths about Harold he'd buried, delivered where they'd hurt most. I'd heard whispers about his past, Clara's late-night confessions, Greg's half-told stories over beers. Harold wasn't the saint he played. I called Tommy, a buddy at the county clerk's office, and asked for records on Harold's old real estate deals. He owed me for fixing his truck, so he didn't ask questions. By evening, he sent scans showing Harold dodged taxes on a property flip in the 90s. It was enough to start with. I saved the files, my pulse quickening. This would be the first message, a crack in his perfect facade. That night, Clara noticed my mood. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I forced a smile, said I was fine, but inside, I was buning. Harold's words weren't just an insult, they were years of judgment, making Clara doubt me, poisoning our marriage. I wasn't just fighting for me. I was fighting for us, for the life we built despite him. But as I lay beside her, doubt crept in. Was I ready for what this would unleash? I pushed it down. Harold had to pay. I sent the first message at dawn. I'd spent hours crafting it, anonymous but precise. I printed the county records, circled the tax evasion in red, and added a note, "Truth surfaces, Harold. Your family deserves to know you." I drove to his office, a sleek building where he played the big shot accountant, and slipped the envelope under the door. My hands shook not from fear, but from the thrill of striking back. I drove home, adrenaline pumping, imagining his face when he saw it. Clara was making coffee when I got back, her movements slow, like she carried last night's weight. I wanted to tell her, to share the fire in my chest, but I couldn't. She'd always defended her dad, even when he didn't deserve it. If she knew, she'd beg me to stop, and I wasn't sure I could. I kissed her cheek and headed to the shop, where engines usually calmed me. Not today. I was wired, waiting for the fallout. By afternoon, Clara got a call from Diane. Harold was raging about a cowardly prank at work, she said. I kept my face neutral, asking, "What kind?" Clara relayed that someone sent old documents, stirring trouble. Her worry was clear, but I saw curiosity in her eyes. Harold's perfect image was cracking, and I'd barely begun. That night, I dug deeper. Greg had once mentioned Harold's old partner, Leonard, who left town after a falling out. I found Leonard on social media, now in Florida, and messaged him, "Heard you and Harold had issues. Care to share?" He replied fast, bitter, spilling how Harold forged signatures to steal profits from a deal. It was gold. I saved the chat, my second message forming. But guilt started to creep in. Clara loved her dad, flaws and all. If I tore him down, would I lose her? The thought twisted my gut. I remembered our early days, her laugh, dancing in our tiny apartment, choosing me despite Harold. I wasn't just fighting him, I was fighting for her respect, our future. But revenge is a tightrope. One misstep, and I'd fall. I looked at Clara, reading on the couch, unaware of my plan. I wanted to protect her, but I was risking everything. Harold's words had cut deep, but they were just words. What I was doing could unravel his life and ours. I pushed the doubt away, focusing on Leonard's words. Harold had betrayed others before me. He didn't deserve to hide. I spent the night planning the second message, my resolve hardening. I'd make him squirm, let his precious reputation take the hit. But as I typed, Clara's voice echoed in my mind, "We're supposed to be a team." I ignored it, but it lingered, a warning I couldn't shake. The second message was bolder. I mailed a printed screenshot of Leonard's accusations to Harold's country club, where he bragged to his golf buddies. The note read, "Ask Harold about Leonard. Secrets don't stay buried." I knew those guys would talk, and Harold's pride would burn. I pictured him stammering, trying to explain, his face red with fury. It felt good, maybe too good. When Clara came home, she was quiet, her eyes distant. "Dad's acting weird," she said, stirring tea. "Mom says he's paranoid, thinks someone's after him." I nodded, feigning concern, but my heart raced. It was working. Harold was feeling the pressure I'd felt under his gaze. But Clara's worry gnawed at me. She wasn't just his daughter, she was my wife, caught in my war. I started questioning myself. Was this worth it? Harold's words had hurt, but they were fleeting. What I was doing could shatter his world. I thought about stopping, but then I remembered Thanksgiving, the laughter, Clara's trembling hand, the way he'd made me feel small. No. He needed to know what it was like to be exposed. I began planning the third message. Clara had once, in anger, mentioned Harold's affair before she was born. Diane forgave him, but it still hurt. I didn't have proof, but I knew someone who might, Diane's sister, Ruth, who despised Harold. I called her, playing the worried son-in-law. She spilled everything: a woman named Ellen, 1985, a secret Diane buried. It was enough. That night, I sat in the garage, staring at my tools. They were solid, reliable, unlike the mess I was making. I thought about Clara, how she'd look at me if she knew. I imagined her eyes, full of love once, now clouded with doubt. I'd wanted to protect our marriage, but I was risking it. Revenge was supposed to feel righteous, but it felt like a weight, heavier with each step. I tried talking to Clara, testing the waters. "Your dad's been off lately, huh?" I said, casual. She sighed. "He's stressed. Mom's not helping." I wanted to confess, to tell her why, but fear stoked me. What if she hated me? What if I'd already lost her? I went back to my plan, convincing myself it was for us. Harold had belittled me for years, made Clara question me. This was my stand. But as I typed the third message, my hands trembled. I was crossing a line, and there was no going back. I sealed the envelope, my resolve wavering but holding. Tomorrow, I'd send it. Tomorrow, Harold would face his past. And I'd face whatever came next. The third message was the darkest. I typed a letter to Diane, anonymous. Harold wasn't faithful. Ask him about Ellen, 1985. You deserve truth. I mailed it from a post office across town, my hands sweating as I dropped it in. This wasn't just about Harold's pride anymore, it was his marriage, his family. But he dragged my marriage into his venom at Thanksgiving. Fair was fair, I told myself, though it felt less true each time. That night, Clara came home in tears. "Mom and Dad fought," she said, voice breaking. She asked about some woman named Ellen, and he lost it. I held her, murmuring comfort, but inside, I was a wreck. I'd wanted Harold to hurt, but seeing Clara cry tore at me. I'd caused this. Her pain was my fault, even if I hadn't meant it. I tried to justify it Harold's affair, his lies, but it didn't ease the guilt. Over the next days, the fallout grew. Greg called, saying Harold was drinking more, snapping at everyone. The country club was buzzing with gossip, and Diane was distant, her trust in Harold shaken. I should have felt victorious, but I felt empty. Clara started asking questions, wondering who was targeting her dad. I lied, said I didn't know, but her eyes searched mine, suspicious. I replayed my choices. The first message tax records had been a jab. The second Leonard's accusations had been a blow. This third one, about Ellen, was a wrecking ball. I'd wanted Harold to feel exposed, but I hadn't expected the ripple effect. Clara was pulling away, and I couldn't blame her. I'd betrayed her trust, gone behind her back. I thought about confessing, but fear stopped me. What if she left? One night, I found an old photo of us, laughing at a fair. Clara's smile was bright, unburdened. I wanted that back, but I'd built a wall between us. I started questioning what I'd gained. Harold was suffering, sure, but so was everyone else. I went to the garage, my sanctuary, and sat among my tools, feeling like I'd broken something I couldn't fix. I'd wanted to prove I wasn't worthless, but I was proving the opposite. I tried to reach Clara, leaving notes, doing small things, washing dishes, fixing her car. She didn't push me away, but she didn't let me in either. I kept seeing Harold's face, his sneer, calling me trash. I'd wanted to make him pay, but the cost was too high. I was losing Clara, and I didn't know how to stop it. The third message was out, and the damage was done. All I could do was wait for the next wave. Harold showed up at our house a week later. Clara was at work, and I was in the garage when his car pulled in. He looked haggard, eyes bloodshot. "You," he said, pointing. "This is you, isn't it?" My wrench clattered to the floor, my heart pounding. I could have lied, but his eyes' fear, anger, desperation stopped me. He knew. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, voice shaky. He stepped closer, reeking of whiskey. "You're tearing my family apart, you piece of trash." That word again, trash. It lit a fire in me, but I held back. "Maybe you did that yourself," I said quietly. He stared, then left. When Clara got home, I told her everything. The records, Leonard, Ellen. Her face went pale, then red. "How could you, Marvin?" she whispered. "He's my dad." I tried to explain his cruelty, my hurt, our future, but she walked away, locking herself in our room. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, the weight of my choices crushing me. I'd wanted Harold to hurt, but I'd hurt Clara worse. The next days were hell. Clara barely spoke, her eyes avoiding mine. I threw myself into work, but the shop felt empty, like my life. I'd thought revenge would make me feel strong, but it made me feel small. I kept seeing Clara's face, her tears, and I hated myself for it. I'd wanted to protect our marriage, but I'd cracked it instead. I called Tommy, needing someone to talk to. "Did I go too far?" I asked, leaning against his truck. He shrugged. "You wanted him to hurt. He's hurting. But what's it cost you?" His words hit hard. I'd cost myself Clara's trust, maybe her love. I thought about Diane's call, her calm voice saying she wasn't mad. She'd confronted Harold, and he'd confessed about Ellen. They were working through it, but the damage was done. I started writing Clara letters, pouring out my heart, apologies, promises, memories of us. I left them on her pillow, hoping she'd read them. One day, I found one returned, with a single word, try. It wasn't much, but it was hope. I clung to it, vowing to be better. But I couldn't shake the fear that I'd lost her for good. Harold's words had started this, but I'd finished it, and the wreckage was mine to face. Clara's silence was a blade, sharper than Harold's insults. Days passed, and she barely looked at me, her eyes carrying a hurt I'd caused. I'd wanted to strike back at Harold, to make him feel the weight of his words, but I hadn't seen the fallout coming. Clara was my everything, her laugh, her touch, the way she'd hum while cooking, and now she was slipping away. I threw myself into work, hoping the rhythm of the shop would dull the pain, but every tool reminded me of the wrench I'd dropped when Harold confronted me. My hands, built for fixing things, couldn't fix this. I kept replaying Thanksgiving. The room's silence, Clara's trembling hand, the way Harold's worthless trash had burned into me. I'd thought revenge would heal that wound, make me feel whole. Instead, it left me hollow. Clara wasn't just angry, she was grieving. Her dad, for all his flaws, was her hero, and I'd torn him down. I started to wonder if I was the trash he'd called me, not for my job, but for what I'd done to us. One night, I found Clara on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the street. I sat beside her, heart pounding. "I'm sorry," I said, voice raw. She didn't answer, just pulled the blanket tighter. Finally, she spoke, barely audible. "You hurt me, Marvin. You lied." Her words cut deep. I tried to explain Harold's years of sneers, how I'd felt less than, how I'd wanted to protect us. But she shook her head. "We're supposed to be a team." She was right. I'd acted alone, thinking I was fighting for us, but I'd shut her out. I thought of Diane's call, her calm warning, "Be careful what you wish for." I understood now. Revenge hadn't lifted me, it had dragged everyone down. Greg had stopped calling, embarrassed by the family drama. Harold's club had dropped him from the board. I'd wanted him to feel small, but Clara's pain was the real cost. I started leaving notes for Clara, apologies, memories of our early days, promises to change. I didn't know if she read them, but I kept trying. One night, I found a note returned, with her handwriting, "Try." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. I talked to Tommy at the shop, asking if he'd ever regretted something he thought was right. "Own it, man," he said. "Move forward." I knew he was right. I had to face Clara, myself, maybe even Harold. I wasn't ready for that last part, but I'd start with her. Months later, the dust settled, but the scars remained. Clara and I were rebuilding, but it was fragile, like a house after a storm. We started counseling, Diane's idea. Our therapist, Linda, made us dig deep. I talked about my insecurity, how Harold's words had hit old wounds, how I'd let anger drive me. It was hard, feeling exposed, but Clara's struggle to forgive me pushed me to keep going. She deserved better than the man who'd chosen revenge. Harold and I never spoke again. Clara said he'd apologize to her, admitting he'd been too harsh. It wasn't much, but it was something. She said he was drinking less, trying to fix things with Diane. I wanted to feel satisfied my messages had forced him to face his past, but it felt empty. Clara's eyes still held a shadow, a reminder of my betrayal. Her word, "Try," became my guide. I tried to listen, to be open, to show her I wasn't that man anymore. I ran into Greg at a gas station one day. He looked worn, his usual grin gone. "You stirred things up, Marv," he said. I nodded, unsure what to say. "Dad's not the same," he added. "Neither's the family." I offered to buy him coffee, and he agreed. We talked about cars, sports, anything but the mess. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step. I reflected on why I'd done it. Harold's words had hurt because I'd let them. I'd spent years proving myself to him, to Clara, to myself. But proving myself didn't mean tearing him down. It meant being the man Clara needed. I started fixing up our garage, making it a space for us to work together, like before. One day, Clara smiled while sanding a table, and it felt like hope. Revenge is a trap. It promises justice but leaves ashes. I'd wanted Harold to hurt, but I'd hurt Clara worse. Her love kept me going, but I had to earn it back. Sometimes, I still hear Harold's voice, calling me trash, but I'm learning to let it go. It's not about him anymore. It's about us, Clara and me, building something new from the wreckage.